Chris Carlin, Eric LeGrand, now joined by Rutgers Director of High School Relations. And you talk about a guy that's synonymous with high school football in New Jersey over the last several years. That guy is Rick Mantz. Coach, how are you?
I'm doing real well. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
He has coached some pretty good ones.
Been very fortunate. You can't complain.
Sean O'Hara, Mohamed Sanu.
You got it.
You've coached at Passaic. You've coached at South Brunswick. You've coached at Hillsborough. Where else am I missing?
No, those are basically the stops. And then I got a call from Chris Ash asking if I wanted to join this Rutgers extravaganza, and I was excited, and I still am. You know, believe it or not, I love my job. I still do. A lot of good things are happening, and we're going to keep fighting and scrapping and get this thing where it needs to be.
And Coach, what's it been like now on the other side of things as instead of coming up with game plans to stop the high school coaches, now meeting with them and developing just not developing, continuing a relationship now with them on the other side and trying to convince their kids to come here.
It's been great, Eric. I'm really, really lucky. I've had a lot of friendships over the years, and I like to think that I won enough games as a high school coach to earn people's respect, but yet I didn't beat guys bad enough to alienate anyone. They've all been great, and I think they felt excited. When I got the job with Rutgers, they felt like one of their own was in the house, was in the door, and they felt like the fact that they could call me, that they could text me if they needed something, that was very, very important to them. And what impressed me most when I first got the job was how willing Chris was to understand what was important to those high school coaches. He knew that my coming on board was going to be an important step, but more importantly was, all right, what do you do with that information? Rick can open up some doors. What do we do, once those doors are open? And he and the staff did an amazing job of getting out and meeting the high school coaches. They embraced them, they listened, and that was the one thing that I got a lot of feedback from the high school guys, how much they respect and appreciate Chris's honesty. He's not a BS guy. He's not going to dance around. He's going to tell you straight up where he is, and he's done a great job, I think, of getting those guys to believe in what we're doing.
When he first got here, how did you characterize New Jersey high school football to him?
It's hard. I mean, he heard a lot of stories. Obviously, it's the reason he wanted to bring somebody on board who understood the culture. Chris from Iowa was a bit concerned. Am I going to blend? And we introduced him to many of the New Jersey high school coaches. It was funny. The first week he was here, it was like something out of The Godfather. We set him up with the 5 families in North Jersey. We set him up at a place called Reds up by Giant Stadium, and he met Nunzio from Bergen Catholic and his brother Vito from Seton Hall Prep, and we got them all in one big room, and of course Greg Toll and all the guys. He wanted to meet some of the big players, and we sat everybody down, and he said, look, this is my vision, this is what I'd like to do, but I need your help. And I think they all felt right away that this is a guy we can trust, this is a guy that we can respect, and he ended up having a couple of scotches with Greg Toll, and by the end of the night I feel that they trusted Chris, and I thought that was a huge step in getting their respect. And they still call, they text, they want tickets, they want us to look at their kids, and Chris and the guys have been very receptive.
And what's the day-to-day like, I guess, for you now when you have to develop with the coach relationship? I know you try to talk to them as much as possible, but you also don't want to nag each and every day. So what's a day like for you, day to day?
It's interesting. I'm one of the most unsocial social media guys. When I got on board here, I had like 4 people that followed me on Twitter and 3 of my family. And now all of a sudden I've got 7,500 people that are checking out, Rick Mantz on Twitter. And I'm thinking, gosh, it's not that I'm so
you're
sexy.
Really promoting the Rick Mantz brand right
Well,
here.
it's ridiculous. But the fact is everybody's, they're sending me a text message, they're sending me a direct, hey, coach, I got a guy, coach, my nephew, coach, I got these recruits you got to take a look at. So a lot of the day is we go through all those kids. I look at them myself. We forward them to the recruiting staff. And that's something that Chris was very adamant about. And I felt important, too, because I would hear those stories over the years. Hey, I sent Rutgers this kid, and they never followed up. And I sent him a name. We sent him a tape. The kid ends up playing in Oregon. Why didn't Rutgers follow up? Since I've been there and since Chris has gotten there, we follow up. We look at the film, we get the transcripts, and that's a big part of the day. Do I get frustrated because I'm not coaching anymore? Absolutely. Chris yells at me all the time. Rick, you can't get us in trouble with compliance. You get away from the offensive lineman. You're not a coach. You can't turn that off. 35 years, you can't turn that off. But I do love my job. Every day, being in that office, being around those guys, it's a challenge right now. There's no doubt. But the energy and what we're trying to do, I think, is important, and I'm excited.
Rick Mantz, Rutgers Director of High School Relations, joining us here on this week's edition of the Chris Ash Show. Take me back to your coaching days in high school. What did you envision the role of the high school coach was in the recruiting process?
I always felt it was important for us to be proactive with the kids, and a lot like we're doing at Rutgers. It's not just about helping the kids become better football players, helping the kids become better kids. Making sure that academically the kids were squared away, getting them to understand early on that, hey, your grades your freshman year count. All 4 years, guys, matter. So get those kids squared away with their core courses, helping those kids throughout the entire process, making sure as they get older, and again, I'm dating myself, but back in the day before the internet, before Huddle, you were actually putting videotapes together, mailing them out to schools, reaching out to the colleges, sending them the kids' contact information. Those were all certainly things that we felt we were responsible for as coaches. Packing kids up and taking them on recruiting trips. We'd make sure that every one of our kids visited Rutgers. And I was fortunate. We had Sean O'Hara, as you mentioned. I had a kid named Sean Mayer that ended up going to Penn State and played in the league and got a Super Bowl trophy with the Patriots. Jared Jones, a talented kid, ended up going to Syracuse. But getting those kids the exposure, and again, not so much those 1A kids that were going to be scholarship kids. The challenge is all those Division III kids that you have and those Division II kids that might get a chance to go to college because of their ability to play football. It's not that they're going to be big stars, but that might be the ticket to get you in. And right, wrong, or indifferent, we got kids in the University of Pennsylvania and Princeton and Colgate, and they got great educations because football, gave them that opportunity. And that was all part of the job. And back in the day, we'd cut the grass and you'd line the fields and you'd build turf and weight rooms. And I think most of the high school guys know that that's part of the gig.
I want to take it actually back to way back to what even made you want to get into high school coaching and things of that nature.
It's interesting. I was a guy that loved playing ball as a kid. Now, to look at me today, and I know this is going to be hard for a lot of you folks to believe, the folks that are in this room, and I know the 6 people that are probably listening at home with their golden retriever. You can't see me, but back in the day, Chris, I was a stubby little white guy that didn't have a whole lot of ability. And you look at me now, you say, Rick, no. I said, yes, I really didn't have a lot of ability coming out of high school, but I wanted to come to Rutgers anyway. I knew I couldn't play there, but I wanted to go anyway. Coach Burns was on staff, and I went to be a Rutgers engineer because it sounded cool, and I came to Rutgers and really thought I would be okay not playing, and I blew a gasket. I couldn't stand it. My sophomore year, I walked on. Of course, I was Rudy. I got bounced all over the place, and then they finally told me I couldn't play at Rutgers. So I started to coach. I coached high school ball my senior year. I coached at Manville High School. We had 12 little Polish kids and a goat, and it was a fun experience. We didn't have a whole lot of wins, but it was a great time. And I said, you know what? I love being around kids. I love coaching. I love, this thought. I ended up getting a degree in business. I worked in New York City for 6 months. I had a Honda Accord with no air conditioning and a 5-speed transmission. I had to drive through Staten Island every day. This is back in the day when Fresh Kills was Fresh Kills. You couldn't breathe. I mean, literally, it was unbelievable. I know there was burying bodies out there. It was Jimmy Hoffa someplace underneath Staten Island. But anyway, I spent a whole summer hating it. I said, you know what? I can't do this. I want to go back to graduate school. I want to teach, and I want to coach. And I started my own construction company, Green Bay Construction, and I went back to Rutgers grad school. Again, this is before the online stuff and the internet. You had to put your butt in a seat 3 nights a week. And so I was working construction. I would coach high school football, and then I came to Rutgers 3 nights a week. The last 2 years of that extravaganza, I was actually a graduate assistant here. In 1990 and 91, Doug Graber was hired, if you all remember. Yep. And he needed somebody that, again, understood New Jersey, and I was already in grad school, so I spent my last 2 years coaching with Doug. And I was very fortunate to be a part of that staff. We recruited a couple of guys that you might remember, Marco Battaglia, Ray Lucas, Malik Jackson, and Jay Bellamy. And it was a fun time, and Doug did a heck of a job, but Rutgers was a little different place back then, and it was certainly a challenge. But I loved coaching. When I got my degree, I ended up going back, and I coached high school ball, because I didn't want to pack my family up every 15 minutes like these college guys do. And I had a great run, as you mentioned. I was very lucky. Hillsborough, we had a great run. We won some championships and went down to South Brunswick, and I had this kid named Mohamed Sanu down there. And
had some battles against you guys.
They hadn't been to playoffs in 30 years. I said, you got Mohamed Sanu. We got to fix that.
Yeah.
And I was amazing. I was smart as all get out when he was there. It was something. But I bounced around. Then I went to Passaic, and I don't know why, but somebody called and said, hey, we need some help. And I went up there, and I didn't speak Spanish. It was an adventure, but I'm telling you, great kids. They fought like crazy. And then I got a call from Coach Ash, and here I am.
Wow, that's a journey. Sure is.
That's awesome.
Take me back to when Sean was making the decision, and you're at Hillsborough, and he's going to walk on at Rutgers. What do you remember about the whole recruiting process, about his decision to come here?
Well, Sean was certainly not the Sean O'Hara you see now. I mean, now he's probably still a donut away from 280. I mean, he's still a big, strong, athletic guy. When he was coming out of high school, he had played basketball. He actually ran track, and he was kind of a skinny, scrawny kid, believe it or not, coming out. And nobody at that point really believed that this kid was going to be a big-time player. And Hofstra, as a matter of fact, was the only school that offered him anything. Greg Gingatina was out there, and Gardy was the coach, and they said, we'll give him a partial. And I remember going out there with Sean and his dad, and we drove back. And he said, Coach, not for nothing, I don't mean to be an ego guy, but I think I'm better than a partial at Hofstra. is I think that I can play bigger football than that. And I, of course, knew the guys in the Rutgers staff, Doug Graber, and we went over, we sat down, and I said, look, I think this kid's going to be something. I mean, none of us knew exactly what was going to happen, but Sean came, and he ate, and he lifted, and he worked, and he went through the Doug Graber years. And then Terry Shea came in, and he had to, basically reassert himself and say, look, I belong here. And we all know that, hey, he ended up being a left tackle for them, the best lineman they had. Literally walked on as it would be in the NFL, free agent contract with Cleveland, and just worked and, developed himself into a heck of a player.
And with that in mind, when you saw Sean on the field, Super Bowl 42, and you're watching that guy hold up, the visible memory is Sean holding up the newspaper saying, extra, extra, read all about it. I can't imagine what that felt like for you.
It was unbelievable. It felt so good for Sean and his family and the journey that they had all been through. And he is exactly what you would want, in a high school kid becoming a college kid. Just what we'd like to have our Rutgers guys be like today. Yes sir, no sir, whatever you want him to do. Quality person. When he was inducted into the Rutgers Hall of Fame, his dad made the speech and reminded all of us, Sean's a Hall of Fame kid. He's a Hall of Fame person. And then Rutgers just acknowledged his football success. But just so proud of him.
Last one. Just as you talk to kids now, what do you sell about Rutgers?
I believe in this place. I just like everybody in this room, I'm a fan. I grew up here. I know Rutgers, and I know what it has to offer. And it really is a special place. It's a unique place. We've got this large school, 38,000 undergrads, like some of the other guys in our league, but yet we're so unique. If you're a city kid, you can come and live on College Ave, and you can jump on a train, and you're in New York or you're in Philly. If you're a kid that wants a little more grass and some green and to see some deer, you can live on Bush campus. My son could park his truck over on Cook. There's something for everybody. You have those smaller campuses here, which is like going to a small school within a large school. I was a Rutgers college kid. Some of the guys were Cook college kids. It's still those campuses, even though we're no longer those small colleges on paper. It has a lot to offer. I believe in Chris. He is the most focused, disciplined guy you're ever going to meet. What we're doing here, the support from the alums and the donors, the facilities, you guys have seen in 2 years the way that the practice field and the everything in the health center, the weight room, the commitment that we've
The
made.
locker rooms that are coming?
Oh, it's unbelievable. And hey, I'll be the first to tell you, believe me, I'm as frustrated as anybody here. It looks like on Saturdays we picked up 11 guys at McDonald's and say, hey, what are you doing this afternoon? Let's play some ball. There's been some tough times. I've done this for 35 years. I've never seen some of the stuff that we've been going through. You talk about a perfect storm. I mean, great kids. Like Coach said, they work their tails off. They're focused. But we got some young guys, and they're struggling. And they're pressing a little bit. We all know that. I'll see them catch balls in practice constantly, and then they go out in the game, and it looks like, they're catching with their feet. It's frustrating. But the kids are trying. The coaches are trying. Chris is focused. He's never batted an eyelash, and we're going to keep fighting.
He'll be doing 2 shows later tonight down at the Stress
You
Factory.
got it. Tip your bartenders. We'll be here till Tuesday.
It's a 2-drink minimum. Rick, thanks for stopping by.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Coach.
We'll come back with Chris Ash in just a moment. That's Rick Ash, Rick Mantz, Director of High School Relations at Rutgers. Stay with us on the Chris Ash Show.